Their life is at stake in it. Their future, their earning potential.
But see, you went to a good school. I wasn't in a good school district. That's the inequity.
But where did you go to school?
The South. In the South, I had to start school in the South Bronx projects. That's
but
not.
Then didn't you get to go to a private school?
And now we got to check in with the lovely ladies over at The View, because a recent episode of The View spiraled into chaos in a debate over education policy. They were discussing Trump's new education secretary nominee and her support for school vouchers, which essentially allow taxpayer money to follow students to the school of their parents' choice. So instead of just taxpayer money that's being allocated for your kid's education, just going to the public school by default, they get a voucher and it goes with them to a charter school, a private school, or a public school, and that's how the funding is allocated. It's part of the school choice movement. Well, one of the hosts of The View, Sunny Hostin, had very strong thoughts about this movement. Take a listen.
And what happens with vouchers, the studies show very clearly that they fund students who are already attending private schools. So people with money get those vouchers, use the vouchers to pay less for their private schools, and their kids go on to do well. Where do you get the money from vouchers? You pull those money from those poor schools, those poor schools.
I don't see it.
Let me just finish this. So wealthy families are overwhelmingly the recipients of school voucher tax credits. I'm not making this up. This has been studied. In 2020, a 2020 study found that only about half of states with voucher programs require teachers to have a bachelor's degree, require teachers to have training, require teachers to have licensing, require participating private schools.
If I may get in, just to make it a conversation.
But because I have children and because I looked at private schools.
I went to public school. I believe you got to go to private school.
There is zero statistical significance.
You got to go to private school.
Because nobody can figure out what's being said here right now. No, there is no last thing right now. We're going to go to break, and then we're going to come back.
Yes.
Because you can't, what's happening is no one can hear anything anyone is saying, so everybody has to,
on it so we can talk.
Well,
that goes for you too, my dear.
That's for word, and she's been talking for 3 minutes.
We'll be right back.
Well, it looks like that segment got a little bit spicy, but I do love how Sunny cited all these studies about how these voucher programs are terrible and don't work, but didn't mention any of them or actually cite them, so we can't really fact check or verify them. But it's not true that school choice programs just benefit the wealthy, although everyone does get to participate, including well-off families. In fact, they really benefit people who aren't particularly rich the most. Because rich people already had school choice. They have enough money to, yes, pay the taxes that go to fund the local public school, but then pull their kid out and double pay for education and send them to a private school. Really rich people already have that choice. So school choice doesn't really expand or change their options. It just means that the tax money allocated for their kid's education will actually go to the school that's educating their kid, rather than the local public school that isn't educating their kid, which makes sense. Voucher programs very specifically enable those families who can't afford to double pay for education, who can't afford to pay private school tuition, to be able to send their kid to a charter or private school. And Sunny raises this concern that not all these programs completely require all these stringent things about the schools, but they leave it up to parents. That parents can pick a school that will suit their kids' needs and has good outcomes and good teachers. And I think the fundamental premise behind the school movement, school choice movement that I sign on to, is that parents know what's best for their kids better than government bureaucrats in some state capital. Parents, by and large, aren't going to pull their kids out of excellent public schools to put them in terrible, horribly run private schools with incompetent teachers. No, if the public schools are doing a good job, they'll leave their kids there. And if they're not, parents will know what's best. They're actually on the ground, they're familiar with their district and their situation, and they'll shop different school choice options, different private schools, and they'll pick the one that's best for their kid. I trust parents to make those decisions a lot more than I trust Sunny Hostin, who, as Alyssa Farah-Griffin tried to point out, went to private schools because she's very wealthy, so she's always had that school choice. But many Americans do not, and that is what school choice programs are aimed at changing. Now let's hear what Alyssa Farah-Griffin had to say after they came back from the break.
I personally worked on the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program when I was working in Congress. In that program alone, which is a charter school system, it experienced a 21% increase in graduation rates. There are conflicting statistics, but according to Morning Consult, the majority of Americans support health savings account, vouchers, in the taxpayer money following the students. It is my belief, as somebody who grew up in the public school system, believes in it, and was grateful to be in a really good school district.
Yes.
If you're in a school that's falling behind and your parent wants to give you the opportunity to get a leg up, your tax dollars should follow you.
Question,
But
you're a
harms-
school charter person, and this is part I don't understand. Doesn't it come down to less the result and more the choice of isn't the fight for the parents to say they choose it? Is that what most people are supporting?
It's simply that a parent should be able to make the best choice for their student. But I also think that there are schools that are falling behind. It doesn't mean they don't deserve education, but I don't think students should be victims of a falling behind school. Their life is at stake in it, their future, their earning potential.
But see, you went to a good school. I wasn't in a good school
Let me
district.
talk.
That's the inequity.
But where did you go to school?
The South, in the South, I had to
Just jump
start
in,
school in
Whoopi.
the South Bronx projects. That's
But then
not,
didn't you get to go to a private school?
Here's what's
So this is exactly right. School choice programs have been implemented in places that are run by Democrats, like Washington, D.C. And that's not because they help the rich. It's because they specifically help often low-income minority students who are trapped in failing public schools and have no options. Now, I agree with Alyssa Farah Griffin. Some public schools are great. I went to good public schools growing up in Massachusetts, and if there had been a school choice program, I might have just stayed put. I don't know that I would have left my school because it was fine. I got everything I needed there. But many students do not face that reality. They're trapped in schools that aren't setting them up for success, that aren't meeting their needs, and yes, parents should have a say, should have a choice, should have an option to send their kid to a different school. We shouldn't trap kids into broken systems and I know these people would say, well, we just don't fund them enough. A lot of these schools are very well funded. The U.S. spends far more per student on public education than most similar advanced nations. We've thrown money into many of these public school systems, and they haven't improved. Some are doing great, and those ones wouldn't really be defunded by school choice very much at all because people would choose to stay there. It's the failing schools that would lose money and potentially have to close down, and you know what? Maybe they should. When you have a monopoly on education and you just get all this money and all these students stuck in your school no matter what, and they can't leave no matter how bad a job your school is doing, that's not going to lead to good results. The total absence of competition or any sort of market forces. When there's actually competition, schools have to provide good services and have to meet families' needs at least more than they can than they will when they just have all the money and all the students by default because of local zoning and zip codes. That's just my take. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. And were you surprised to see the ladies of The View wade into education policy? I didn't know it was up their alley, and I frankly wasn't super impressed with the quality of the discourse in their segment. But hey, it was interesting to watch, I guess.